the government numbers were actually stagnating. Pulses output was stagnating between 14 and 15 million tons over the last several years. But thanks to a sharp hike in minimum support price in 2010-11, there was a quantum jump in acreage and a quantum jump in production. Therefore, from 14.7 million tons in 2009-10, we find a big jump to 18.2 million tons in production of various pulses in India. And that also tells on the number as far as imports are concerned. And therefore, you can see, while in 2009-10 we had 15 million tons of production, our import was 3.7 million tons. And the following year, with a big jump in production, our imports have actually declined to 2.8 million tons. Current year, 2011-12, and the Rabi harvest, or the second harvest, is now taking place. The acreage is 25.2 million hectares. Production, the latest estimate is 17.3 million tons. 17.3 million tons is about close to a million tons less than it was last year. But yet, remember, this is the second highest on record. And it's very important for us to remember that this is the second highest on record. There has been a significant improvement, although slightly lower than last year. Therefore, imports have been taking place, imports are taking place, and my estimate, a good judgment estimate of import for 2011-12 financial year is about 2.7 million tons. Until about December, the total imports were about 2.4 million tons, and my sense is that the first quarter, Jan, Feb, March, it will be about 400,000 tons, taking it to between 2.7 and 2.8 million tons for the current year, which is the financial year, April to March. I have ignored consciously both carry in and carry out. I have assumed a seed, I think we'll come to the demand side, which is very clearly the seed. I have assumed 20 kilograms per hectare, although there could be a small variation in some crops. The farmers tend to use about 25 kilograms of seeds, but on an average, for most pulses, the seed rate is about 20 kilograms. We also have to take into account production losses, the shelling losses or milling losses, which I have assumed at 20% on an average. These calculations usually don't go into the demand supply estimates prepared by Government of India or any other research agencies. This is something very critical, because what the consumer eats is a dal, the milled dal, and there is a certain processing loss. And that processing loss has to be factored in. It actually, so much quantity disappears from the market in terms of processing loss. We also have very small quantum of export, which in the last 2 years has been about 200,000 tons. That leaves dal available as food this year at about 15.2 million tons, vis-a-vis last year's 16 million tons. And the previous year, it was 14.1 million tons. Therefore, you can see that India has broken the 14, 15 million tons barrier. We have now gone to a higher level of between 17 and 18 million tons in terms of total production, and in terms of actual consumption of dal, the milled dal. I think we are in the level of now 15 to 16 million tons of consumption of dal, and this is on the demand side, and therefore there is a certain balance between the demand and supply, and I have also to mention that irrigated area under pulses is between 15 and 16%. There is an opportunity to expand the irrigated area under pulses. Pulses are grown in India under small and marginal farming conditions. And the farmers tend to use inadequate amounts of inputs, whether it is seeds or fertilizers or agrochemicals or even water for that matter. So there is an opportunity for us to strengthen the input delivery system, and if we are able to induce the farmer through price and other incentives to improve the levels of input usage, I'm sure yields are going to improve over the next few years. I'll stay here with the demand and supply, and then go on to an important slide which I think will be of interest to this audience. So I've said earlier, 14.1 million tons was the total dal consumption in India in 2009-10, which substantially improved to 16 million tons in 2010-11 and marginal decline at 15.2 million tons in 2011-12. The population numbers are given. India's population is growing at about 1.6 or 1.7% a year. We add to ourselves about 16 to 17 million year after year. For the current year, the population is estimated at 1.2 billion or 1,200 million. For if the per capita availability of pulses, therefore, comes to about 12.7 kilograms per person per year. It was 12 kilograms 2 years ago, improved to 13.5 kilograms last year, marginal decline, of course, to 12.7 kilograms. These numbers are certainly not flattering, very simply because nutritionists recommend, Mr. Chairman, nutritionists recommend 20 kilograms per capita consumption. And Indian population is predominantly vegetarian. Pulses are the major source of vegetable protein available in India. Milk is expensive, eggs are expensive, meat is expensive. Pulses, legumes are a great source of vegetable protein, and there's a great need to augment pulses production and deliver pulses at more affordable prices to consumers who are in significant numbers nutritionally challenged. The second point I want to make is volatile prices. Our prices have been volatile in the last 2 or 3 years. There's a strong need to contain volatility in the market. Some of the speakers also mentioned in the morning about need to curb volatility in prices, simply because inflation, food inflation, and volatile prices hurt poor consumers in particular. That brings me to my last point for the day, which is that we as a nation, and I'm happy representatives of the ministry, the government of India are here. We need to ensure nutrition security for this country. We need to ensure that pulses are available to everyone at very, very affordable prices. And one way to deliver pulses to the vulnerable sections of the population is by including pulses under the public distribution system. The central government, the federal government, the government of India supplies rice, wheat, and sugar under the public distribution system. I believe there's a great opportunity, great need to include pulses also under the public distribution system. Sugar is much less of an essential commodity. Pulses are really an essential commodity for this country, and therefore, inclusion of pulses will help deliver protein to people, vegetable protein to people. And therefore, my request, and I want to use this platform to make out a case for the government to procure pulses and supply them through the public distribution system for the poor people of this country. The second point is the skew in consumption. In terms of incomes, the top 30% of the population gets to consume about between 20 and 25 kilograms per capita. And the bottom 30% of the population, the financially challenged, if I may say, actually consumes much less than 10 kilograms per capita. And it is that section of the population which suffers from pervasive malnutrition and undernutrition. And it is that section of the population which deserves to be given, to be actually delivered vegetable protein, and pulses are certainly a great source of vegetable protein. And I hope the government officials sitting here will take note of this, and we will have to make sure that that we don't anymore remain protein deficient, and people who can't afford pulses today are given access to pulses at more affordable prices. Thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasekhar, for an excellent presentation. Any questions for Mr. Chandrasekhar?
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasekhar, for your excellent presentation. Of course, I have really many questions to ask, but I will confine myself to a few. Firstly, you said that our per capita consumption of pulses has increased during the last 2-3 years. But if you take a longer period, much longer period, of say last 20 years, then India's per capita consumption of pulses has actually declined. It was as high as about 17 grams at one time. It has come down